education policy approved by the cabinet has run into its fair share of controversy. While some have had an issue with its focus on regional language, arguing that it is keeping behind Indians who need to learn English to progress, some states have a problem with the three-language policy. Now, Tamil Nadu, for one, has said it will not implement the three-language policy, which essentially says that a student must start learning three languages right from the beginning of their schooling. In fact, the Tamil Nadu Chief Minister has made it clear that his state will stick to the two-language policy that they currently follow. It's not just that. As time goes by, it's important to look at the nuances of a policy which aims to shake up Indian education as we know it. And to help us do that today is Mr. Anil Swarup, former Education Secretary, in fact he retired as Education Secretary from the Service of Government of India, and someone who has studied this subject very closely firsthand. Mr. Swarup, welcome to ET Now, and always a pleasure to speak with you.
Thank you very much.
All right, let me begin with the question of three languages and the issue with it. This is not a new problem and not just for Tamil Nadu. There has always been this tussle about whether the regional language of the state should be given primacy. Part of it comes from the fear that Hindi is being imposed, although the creators of the policy made it clear that they're not imposing any language on anyone. What is your take on the three-language issue, and do you think there needed to be more consultation with states so as to avoid a situation like this, where states turn around and say that we just won't implement the new policy?
So there is nothing new in what is being talked about right now. We must appreciate the fact that the policy is a policy is a policy. This is not a government order. I don't think central government has any intention of mandating a language formula. Even earlier, the three-language formula was not mandated. So Tamil Nadu has its own point of view. It had it last time, it has it now. I don't know why we are wasting time on discussing this aspect, because each state has an issue on that. And I don't think this issue is going to impact the quality of education, which the policy focuses on. The policy is very clear. It focuses on improving the quality of education in the country. Three-language formula is mentioned because that's been historically the point that has been mentioned by the central government, and central government stands by it. State government stand by that. It doesn't really impact education at all. But we tend to discuss that because that happens to be a very controversial part of our existence.
Well, Mr. Swarup, to be fair, the three-language policy has been detailed in the plan as a belief that it is best for children to learn more than two languages. So it is a very integral part of the policy. And if it is well known that many states will not be on board of it, then what's the point of having it in a policy which plans to change education after 3 decades?
So do we consider that this aspect is the most important aspect of the policy? To my mind, it is not. It has been there for donkey's years and it is still there in the policy, slightly more fleshed out. But I don't think anyone is going to sweat about it. I don't think much is going to happen about it. The focus will and should be on other parts of the policy, which to my mind are much more important in improving the quality of education. Three language or no language will not help improve quality of education. And unfortunately, as I keep saying, it's the part that's the most controversial part. And hence it gets to be discussed more than it deserves to be discussed.
Okay, we will definitely discuss more than just this, but I just wanted to get your view on this. One more aspect as far as language is concerned, and I wouldn't say it's controversial, but it's definitely led to a lot of debate, is the focus in the policy on regional language / mother tongue being the primary medium of instruction. Now, the two views on this is, on the one side, people are lauding this, saying, great, our regional languages, our mother tongue needs such impetus. On the other side, people say that this is detached from the reality, where a lot of Indians, the moment they have the opportunity, want to educate their children in English simply because they believe this is the only way for upward mobility, for better jobs, for higher incomes.
Let us understand this clearly. The policy has to be looked at two levels. One is at the conceptual level and the other at the operational level. Let us discuss this part of the policy in both these contexts, the conceptual level and the operational level. At a conceptual level, it is clearly established by various researchers that comprehension and understanding of concepts, etc., is much easier in mother tongue. So this is clearly theoretically established. Even in practical plane, if you look at the best school in Delhi, which I know is Sardar Patel. Sardar Patel School teaches subjects in Hindi language for the first 5 years, and then they switch over to English, and you have finest people coming out of it. Navodaya Vidyalaya teach the children in their mother tongue from class 1 to 8, and finest people come out. So theoretically and conceptually, it's a brilliant idea, both in terms of understanding and comprehension. The problem will really come in terms of practical application, and that is true of most of the policy. It has fantastic provisions, but it doesn't explain as to how this would be implemented, and this one such provision. There are going to be enormous amount of practical problems in implementing this concept, which is theoretically very good. But the policy doesn't say it will start happening tomorrow. It says that we'll move towards it, which I think is a good provision. You learn and move ahead. That's the final objective, because that's fundamentally good for children. Because if they learn in the mother tongue, they can still learn English language or any other language which they want to learn. The policy, in fact, encourages other languages. The fundamental approach that the policy is adopting is in terms of comprehension, in terms of understanding a language that is rooted to the culture of the child, to the social matrix of the child. He will understand it much better. So understanding is much better in mother tongue. The policy nowhere says that you will not learn anything else. The initial understanding is better in mother tongue. World over it is established.
Yes, but it's a little fuzzy. As you said, Mr. Swarup, the concept is there, but the implementation, is it regional language or is it mother tongue? Now, in cities like Mumbai, Delhi, and in many parts of the country, in one classroom, you could have children who speak different mother tongues. They need not have the same mother tongue. Then are you going to say impose regional language as the medium of instruction on a child who is from a different state?
So please try and understand that's precisely what I'm saying. Whereas on a theoretical plane, it's the ideal thing to do. Practically, it will be virtually a nightmare. So what the policy says is, this would be the objective. Let us see how it rolls out. It does not mandate that from tomorrow, every child will be taught in mother tongue. In such policies, that is normally done. You look at a vision. You look at a vision which is appropriate. Sometimes it might appear utopian, but it is the way forward. But it doesn't mandate that it should start happening tomorrow. And you are absolutely correct. Not only will this be a problem, there'll be many other practical problems. I often say that you can have brilliant ideas. For any idea to fructify in a democracy like ours, it has to be politically acceptable, socially desirable, technologically feasible, financially viable, administratively doable, and judicially tenable. Now, point 4 and 5 are going to be tricky here. Financial viability and administrative doability. Because what will happen is, this would require training of teachers in a different manner. This would require more teachers. What will you do to children who are migrating? There are myriads of issues that will have to be considered. So the real task of the people in the ministry begin now, because policy that took 6 years to come up with a policy. I remember when the chairman of the committee met me, I told him, why are you wasting your time on a policy? Work on an action plan, because that's where you run into problem. What needs to be done, how it will be done, who will do it, by when it will be done. That's where you get to understand the nitty-gritty of an excellent provision like the ones that we are mentioning, that in implementation, the real problem will come.
I think one point that is important to speak about, and sir, you can come in here with all of the experience that you have had, is how removed any of these policies or action plans are from the stark reality. Most people prefer private education as soon as they are able to afford it. With few rare exceptions, government schools are not the preferred option. Likewise, a lot of people prefer English as the medium of instruction, even if they speak a different language at home. And the dependence on private schooling is only increasing. Do you think that the policy sort of skims over this very strong reality of the world we live in?
I totally agree with you. If at a conceptual level, if I find a flaw in the policies, this is the only flaw. Elsewhere, conceptually, I think ideally this policy is very good. 50% of children go to private schools. And the policy just writes a rough shot over it, barely mentions about it. And in any case, it's in a very negative sense that they say for profit should be thrown out. I personally feel that's not doing service to quality education in India. I think private sector is contributing phenomenally. Yes, there are huge problems in the private sector in terms of fee and other things, but you don't have to ignore it. You don't have to treat them as pariahs. In fact, I have advocated in the articles that I have written that there should have been, they should have looked at the public-private partner part of it. Now, look at it very simply. You know, the private schools, so-called private schools, are exploitative because they are lesser in number. Now, let us assume a situation where we facilitate increase in the number of quality private schools. The fee, etc. issue will be taken care of. When I was coal secretary, everyone said mafia is the problem. I said, no, it is the shortage of coal that is the problem. Once we got rid of shortage of coal, mafia went out straight away. Same is the case. I called school mafias. And these mafias are there because of the monopoly of some of them. So I think policy at a conceptual frame, if I have to be critical of anything, this is one thing. They have just written a rough shot over private sector, not only private sector. Look at the role that the NGOs are performing. The policy virtually ignores it. You know, some of the problems that have been rightly mentioned in the policy, for example, out of school children, very important issue. The importance of the role of NGOs should have been highlighted. How do you incorporate them? In fact, actually, large number of states are utilizing the services of the NGO to get the child back, and some states have done extremely well. The policy doesn't even mention where there's good work going on along with the private sector, along with the NGOs. I think that's a huge lost opportunity at a conceptual level. As I keep saying, at an operational level, there will be many problems, but conceptually, if I have to follow this policy, this probably is the only area.
So let's focus on the operational level, Mr. Swarup, because frankly, that's what matters, isn't it? If we want to change things, we have to start somewhere. Do you think that the most tangible change that we will see is the shift from the 10+2 system that has been envisioned, which takes the total duration of education to now 16 years versus 15 years. Some have argued that that's too much. You're just adding 1 year of costly education and sending people later out into the job stream.
Let me come in here. See, we are unnecessarily discussing this 5+4+4+3. It is nonsense. I mean, they did not have given these numbers. What is important in the policy is the preschool education. That's extremely critical because, again, all researchers have clearly proved that the human brain is formed in the first 6-7 years of growth. And that's where the training or teaching or learning has to start happening. Right now, under the existing dispensation, anything below class 1 is not there at all. So that's a very appropriate focus. Now, this is at a conceptual level, it's very good. Now, let's look at the operational part of it. This will require specially trained teachers because a normal teacher cannot teach in the preschool or pre-1, class 1 in KG and nursery. Normal teacher cannot. Now the policy suggests that they will train Anganwadis. Now we all know what sort of work or the capacity or capability of Anganwadi is. They talk about engaging teachers which are specially equipped. Now if you count the numbers and the money that is required, it will be humongous. And the policy just says that we'll provide 6% of GDP to education. But this was said in Kothari Commission long decades ago, and we haven't got anywhere near 6%. Practically, the allocation of money to school education has actually come down in real terms. So how do we expect this money to come? So this is all wishful thinking, whereas the idea of preschool education is absolutely brilliant. That needs to happen. But now the policy just mentions that they're going to get this money. I don't think that money is coming. They lost out on an opportunity. You know, there is so much space in education that I keep going to that point. They could have leveraged what is happening in the private sector and distributed that. A lot of funding could come actually from the private sector. But we treat them as pariahs. We still live in that socialistic pattern of society where we believe everything needs to be done by government.
No.
I'm not
Mr.
against
Swarup, if I may come in, what do you mean by leveraging the private sector? No,
let me explain this.
So are you suggesting that the private sector now starts subsidizing government education or, starts contributing to this?
I don't know whether you are aware that a large number of municipal schools are today being run by NGOs brilliantly. You know, if you go to Bombay and some in Delhi, I personally visit those schools. That is where the government money is not being invested and NGOs are pitching in. Now, I'm not saying that's the only answer available. We have to look for answers. But if we have the psychology of treating private sector as pariahs, then we are not even discussing that. My contention is the space is huge and there is a lot of money. So there could be for profit. I'm frankly speaking, I don't know why this reservation to for profit. They could have allowed schools to profit and get them to pay the tax and use that money for pumping in elsewhere. No, we won't allow for profit. And what is actually happening is the schools are actually making profit, so they claim that they are non-profit. So the money which should have normally come as tax to the government is not coming. This is a mental block that we have, and we haven't been able to come out of it. So private sector could easily have been leveraged.
Mr. Swarup, you sound disappointed with the policy. Is that a fair assessment? You think a lot more could be done?
Disappointed with the policy. Let me tell you, policy has some amazing features which we don't discuss because again, they are below the ground and they are not sexy enough to be discussed. Let me give you some of the highlights which are doable. So I'm not disappointed with the policy as such. I'm disappointed that it didn't go into the details of how of it. Let me explain where they have actually gone into the how of it and where it will make a difference. You know, we don't discuss that teacher lies at the pivot of school education. Now, the problem with school education is poor quality of education. And the reason for that is that teachers are not equipped. This is where the policy scores. And I hope they carry it out. For example, out of the 16,000 B.Ed and D.Ed colleges we have, where teachers are trained to become teachers, 4,000 do not exist. It's a mafia. I have written that in my book, Ethical Dilemmas of a Civil Servant, where I've explained what sort of a mafia is that. Now, the present policy finds a solution to that problem by recommending a 4-year integrated course of B.Ed where these colleges will be phased out. The policy talks about selection of teachers for government service. You are aware that one of the chief ministers, former chief ministers, is behind the bars for a racket of recruitment of teachers. Now, you imagine a scenario where teachers are ill-trained and they somehow manage to get into government school. What quality of education will they provide? The policy attends to that. But we don't discuss this. We discuss 5 plus 4 plus 4 plus 3. We discuss 3-language formula, which is not taking us anywhere. But teachers and the policy is extremely good. They have actually pinpointed what needs to be done, how it will be done, and who will do it. This is an area where I'm very satisfied with the policy. So basically, I'm very happy with the policy and at a conceptual level. My problem is at the conceptual level for not leveraging private sector and not going into the operational details of how it will be made to happen. They just said this will happen by 2030, by 2025, but how part has not been given in the policy after 6 years. When Dr. Kasturi Rangan met me, I told him you must have an action plan with the policy, but policy doesn't have an action plan. So the burden will lie on extremely competent set of officers in the Department of School Education in Government of India.
Well, I would like to end this interview with something that Dr. Kasturi Rangan told me when I had the chance of speaking with him the day the policy was announced, and I asked him about some of these challenges. He simply said that we have to make a start somewhere.
Yes,
so we'll have to see how it unfolds. But thank you so much for coming in today and speaking to us on this.